Mr. Beast's Dystopia games. If you do not regularly chat with the under 15-year-old crowd, it's possible you do not already know Mr. Beast, the world's most popular YouTube content creator. As I live with a soon-to-be 15-year-old, Mr. Beast is like another family member to us. He's definitely more popular than Dad. Jimmy Donaldson, aka Mr. Beast, has 358 million subscribers on YouTube. His videos attract hundreds of millions of views, making him a much more successful videographer and content producer than almost anyone working in television or movies today. In December, he launched The Beast Games on Amazon Prime, a $5 million reality TV competition in which he dubs the largest prize game show ever. The setup of The Beast Games is that 1,000 contestants will compete until a single winner takes home the $5 million prize. In the first few minutes of episode 1, we learned the why from various contestants who qualified to play. And they're like, I grew up homeless. I want to help homeless kids. And that 5 million would be everything to help me get there. Or it would provide me the opportunity to retire my dad. The difference that money can make and how it can support a community, or completely getting my family out of the poverty pipeline. I will die for this. I will die for $5 million. And if that sounds familiar from watching the blockbuster Korean television show Squid Games, that's because Mr. Beast is absolutely inspired by that show. We get that same Squid Games, I will do anything attitude born from the palpable financial desperation of the contestants. And then, of course, we get the same anonymized humiliation, the same image that humans are disposable losers once eliminated. If you enjoyed Squid Games, you are certain to enjoy Beast Games. Mr. Beast's themes here and throughout his ultra popular YouTube videos tend to the dystopian. He designs scenarios to elicit human desperation. We apparently want to watch each other toggle wildly between fear and greed. He is obsessed with testing the limits of individual interest within a group dynamic. To what extent are we capable of extreme altruism? And then minutes later, to what extent are we willing to engage in horrific betrayals of the group for individual gain? So why should we watch? I mean, we shouldn't. This is awful. I will somewhat justify it because, at least as far as episode 1 goes, there's a lot of updating expected value calculations we can make as we watch the games play out. As I recently wrote in my series on the Texas Lotto, we should embrace EV math. So I'll track that part. Also, many of the initial games involve a sort of prisoner's dilemma, a key behavioral concept around loyalty and betrayal that's worth knowing and thinking about. So I'll track that too. I would further justify watching Beast Games as far as they horribly capture our current cultural and political moment. Financial desperation can and will be exploited for maximum pain in order to entertain us, the voyeurs. Strangers will be pitted against one another in a zero-sum contest. The selfish, bear with me 1 second, the selfish will be incentivized to abase themselves. Others, the altruists, will be exposed as suckers for not taking the money. As a political commentator said in a distinct but also not very distinct context, the cruelty is the point. I think that's basically right as a way to understand Mr. Beast's appeal. Mr. Beast plays the Willy Wonka figure throughout, intent on exposing the awfulness of his game players or their tragic naivete. It's all extremely au courant in a world in which a bankrupt casino owner earned his way into our living rooms and then the White House by shouting, "You fired," on TV for a decade. It's timely, but maybe timeless as well. So the setup for episode 1, we see 1,000 contestants wearing blue jumpsuits, huge white numbers 1 through 1,000 displayed on their chests and backs. They have thus been abjectly anonymized, like soldiers or prisoners. Of course, a long show like this, similar to Squid Games or any reality TV show, promises us the chance to get to know a small cohort of survivors. But we begin with 1,000 nobodies. And throughout episode 1, contestants stand on elevated boxes illuminated and arrayed in an 84 by 12 grid. Each contestant has a button that allows them to choose self-elimination. Each contestant also has a camera with a microphone in a corner of their elevated box, trained on their faces. This allows them to speak directly to the viewing audience about their private thoughts or self-talk during the challenges. 3 of the 4 challenges involve a decision by competitors to purposefully self-eliminate from the $5 million competition. In the first challenge, they faced the hope of being unique iconoclasts compared to the rest, zigging while others zag. In another is an opportunity for pure altruism. In a final challenge, we witness acts of extreme selfishness and betrayal, and this is all super typical Mr. Beast content. From an expected value calculation perspective, we know that each of the 1,000 contestants has a $5,000 positive EV to begin the game. Assuming they all start with an equal chance at winning, a $5 million payout on a 1 in 1,000 probability of winning is $5,000. So challenge number one is the pre-game self-elimination. For the first challenge, Mr. Beast presents a fresh $1 million cash prize. The money consists of bundles of bills ceremoniously dumped into a pile from sacks by stagehands wearing full, face-obscuring masks and black jumpsuits. It's very Squid Games. It's very ominous. Any person who elects to self-eliminate at this point in the pregame can have the 1 million. Of course, if two people elect to self-eliminate, they will have to share $500,000 each. Everyone who removes themselves at the very beginning, in fact, shares in the $1 million pile of cash. So we get a first version of the prisoner's dilemma. The classic version is that two prisoners are in separate rooms being pressured to rat out the other person. Being the only rat to the interrogators condemns the other prisoner to prison for life and rewards the rat with a heavily reduced sentence. The tension of the game is that if both prisoners choose to betray, then they both go to prison for life. If neither betrays, the interrogators do not have enough to convict and both go free. The ideal scenario is to be the first mover to betray, assuming the other does not betray. In challenge one, the ideal scenario is to be a unique self-eliminator while everyone else stays in. Each additional person who eliminates themselves reduces the subsequent reward to the others because the $1 million must be shared. At the end of 10 minutes, 52 people, turns out, willingly take themselves out. Debasement for a pile of money is a central image of Mr. Beast's contest. True to form, we get a final shot of this original cohort of quitters sitting on their pile of dollar bills. These folks took themselves out at the earliest possible opportunity. They each faced 1,000 to 1 odds, an expected value, therefore, of $5,000. Pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered is the phrase that comes to mind. The 52 quitters split the pile evenly at $19,230 each. The fact that they walked away with $19,230 on an EV of $5,000 has to be considered a solid EV trade, especially compared to the many others who will shortly get nothing through no fault of their own. I have a feeling a lot of the contestants still in are going to regret not taking that money, this is Mr. Beast's quote, because this next game might be the most cutthroat game I've ever done, he offers basically as a homily to the camera at the end of that whole challenge. So challenge number 2 is about pure altruism with a kind of a nasty twist. The remaining 948 players now have an expected updated EV of $5,274. The next challenge is a reasonably pure test of the self-sacrifice impulse within a tribe with an added unusual stick. So Mr. Beast announces that the remaining 948 players in the grid are now grouped in rows of roughly 80 players each. These groupings by 12 rows for the moment are considered like 12 teams. Each team must find a pure altruist, someone willing to take themselves permanently out of the game for the greater good of the other 79-ish people in their row. If the altruist self-removes, everyone else in their row is safe and moves on with the game. However, the 3 final rows that do not produce a sacrificial lamb at the end of the time period will be eliminated immediately with no compensation, hence the added tension. If you do not want to be in a group that can't find a self-sacrificer, press the button is like scream the contestants at one another, urging others to do an entirely irrational thing. Why do the individual altruists take themselves out? I don't know. It makes no sense within the context of the game. But 9 people in 9 different rows do it. And in so doing, they simultaneously save their row and ultimately condemn 3 other rows of roughly 80 people each to elimination. My original theory was that women were more likely altruists, but 5 are women, 3 are men, and we don't see one of them self-eliminate on camera. So there's not enough data to test that theory. "Don't forget me," says one self-eliminator during her utterly forgettable 1 second of fame. 3 full rows of roughly 80 contestants each get eliminated because they could not induce one of their own to self-sacrifice within the time frame. Because cruelty and humiliation is the point, this game ends in a dramatic fashion meant to highlight the loser status of certain contestants. Mr. Beast and his co-host friends feign surprise, horror, and then amusement as the floor underneath the eliminated self-sacrifices opens and they, one by one, get dumped like trash. We hear the terrified receding screams of the altruists, presumably dropping down from the heights of their elevated boxes into a heap below. And it didn't have to be that way. The altruists arguably did something noble, self-sacrificing for no personal gain. A choice Mr. Beast could have made would be to lift the altruists onto a moral pedestal, maybe give them a moment for others to appreciate what they did. Or, as in game shows of the past, maybe the altruist would be consoled with a prize. I think The Price is Right used to give turtle wax. I honestly have no idea what turtle wax is, but the image of it is as a consolation prize in a game show is burned in my subconscious mind. In Mr. Beast's world, altruistic suckers like this get no compensation. They get flushed for laughs. Challenge number 3, it's the blocks. It's a sort of a game of skill. At the beginning of challenge number 3, 705 players remain with an EV each of 7,092. All the contestants are given a stack of what looks like colored styrofoam blocks. They have 10 minutes to stack a tower out of all of them without causing them to fall. If they finish with unstacked blocks, they are eliminated. Also, the first 100 contestants whose blocks fall will be eliminated. For viewers, some of the drama comes from the crestfallen faces of people saying, "No, no, no," in slow motion and stuff, as their dreams of $5 million crumble before their eyes. For those of us who've ever played Jenga, we sort of get it, minus the money part. But of the 4 challenges in this episode, block building came with the least psychodrama. Unlike the other 3 games, each contestant is on their own, surviving or failing without affecting the other contestants. The show introduces a little bit of tension because more than 100 contestants had their blocks fall, and as a result, Mr. Beast's judges watching from cameras decide whose blocks fell first. A few of the previously eliminated contestants are restored to the game because their block towers fell, but fell only after 100 towers had preceded them. We don't get much else from this challenge. I definitely would have failed this round because I'm no good with blocks. So challenge number 4, this is the most drama in the show up to this point. This is Mr. Beast's manipulative fuckery at its worst. He relishes the question, essentially, at what price would you be willing to betray innocents and teammates? And the fun for him, and for viewers, I guess, is in the price discovery that answers this question. In this final game, in contrast to challenge number 2, the teams now consist of the columns, not the rows, and the 605 remaining contestants have an updated expected value of $8,264. Mr. Beast offers a bribe beginning at $10,000 for contestants to betray their newly assigned column teammates. By accepting the bribe for self-elimination from the rest of the contest, players simultaneously benefit themselves and totally eliminate everyone else in their column. Your act of selfishness cruelly eliminates people on your team while you get to benefit financially. It's like a mirror of challenge 2, the altruist challenge, exposing the other face of humanity. The expected value at the beginning of this challenge is mildly below the first 10,000 bribe, making it rational to take the money. But nobody does at first, so the bribes offered by Mr. Beast go up. The increments are unknown until they're announced, but next comes 20,000, then 50,000, then 80,000, then 100,000. Mr. Beast never doubts that he can find enough Judases. It's just a question of price. As showmakers, they maximize tension in a few ways. Of course, there's a lot of shouts of people screaming at one another, encouraging people in their column not to self-eliminate. We see these like wavering ones, wide-eyed, considering how they can benefit from their active betrayal. There's the arc of the final Judas, who first wholeheartedly promises not to betray, then goes weak and takes the bag of silver. The first betrayer took the 20,000, removing himself and 7 other innocents with him. 6 betrayers then took the 50,000, another 6 take the 80,000, 4 eventually take the 100,000. These ruthless EV maximizers, willing to completely screw over their innocent teammates who will get left with nothing, are absolutely rewarded. The big money goes to the selfish. The loyal and honest, they get flushed. In the end, Mr. Beast required that his game shrink from 1,000 to a maximum of 500 people before moving on to the next level of the game to be continued in the next episode. He revels in the agreements and acts of trust shared between teammates, only to be broken for money shortly after. And he says, sometimes the people you think you can trust the most are actually the people you can trust the least. He's philosophizing for the show. And okay, sure. But also, fuck you, Mr. Beast. Betrayal was a foregone result of the game design. What else did you think was going to happen? Nothing else could happen in this game. Do you really get to philosophize with that kind of message when there isn't any other outcome given the constraints you invented? It's a really long way to go to artificially create the grimmest fucking philosophical message possible to pound into the tweener crowd that eats up your content. So seriously, fuck off with your philosophizing about an invented system of forced betrayal. The remaining 493 players now each have an EV of $10,142 in their quest to win the $1 million. Most will get nothing, but of course, they all hope the others instead get nothing and they get everything. They are the lucky survivors of this Hobbesian world designed by Mr. Beast, each moving on to episode 2. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, congratulations. Send me a note that you actually watched it or whether you would like to watch video versions of my posts in the future on Substack. Drop me a note. Okay, thanks. Bye.